when you go to traffic court that you're putting up?
Hey, what is up, peeps? What's up? Look at this, 0 views, no viewers. I've got another live up just in case somebody wants to drop in, but I doubt it, but I'm going to keep it open nonetheless. Anyway, it's related to, well, this is what prompted me. This is a Von Poole and all the rest of the Kohberger Cult, including this slob here, Sergeant Friday. It's garbage right here. Yeah, dude, you're garbage. Garbage. Right, peeps? Garbage. You thug. Anyway, clown. Clown with 300 people watching this nonsense. So let's go back to here. I dropped in here and told them about how much DNA was on, Bryan Kohberger's DNA was on the knife sheath. And of course, you can't tell these people anything. You can't. You can't prove anything to them with science. They have it dead set in their mind. It is dead set in their mind that law enforcement are liars. They're lying. They have to be lying. And I'm willing to concede there has been corruption within law enforcement. There are bad cops. There are also good cops. I'm not going to whitewash all of law enforcement because some of it can be corrupt and that they sometimes lie. It doesn't follow logically that that's the case all the time. I see no reason for them to frame Bryan Kohberger here. I'm sorry. I don't. Why would they want to frame Bryan? Who's Bryan Kohberger that they would want to frame him? And this is what they're doing in this chat. When I brought this up, they're effectively saying that they falsified the swab. And they just made it Bryan Kohberger. And that is nonsense. It's nonsense. Listen to yourselves. How would they pick Bryan Kohberger out of a hat? They wouldn't have. And I don't know about you all, but I always understood this. That the IGG is an informant. It's a tip to the case. And that is how they got onto Bryan Kohberger. Turvian here is saying, I don't know how they got to Bryan Kohberger. It was a tip or whatever it was. Or, truth be told, who gives a damn how they got onto Bryan Kohberger? Does that preclude Bryan Kohberger's DNA from being on the knife sheath in prodigious amounts? No, it doesn't. Does it preclude the fact that the vehicle that is circling in the neighborhood, the King Road neighborhood and the neighborhoods behind it all this time, isn't in the year range of his Hyundai Elantra, and it's a Hyundai Elantra in that year range? No, it doesn't preclude any of this. All this that you attack one by one is in a context, and you have to throw it together and couple it all together because it paints a picture. You can't all of a sudden say that's not a picture. If Bryan Kohberger's DNA was on something at that house, knife sheath or otherwise, and he didn't purchase one on Amazon and didn't have one, it wouldn't be as powerful. It'd still be powerful, because why would it be there in such prodigious amounts? But it might not be as powerful. But when you couple it with the fact that he purchased a K-bar knife and sheath and sharpener, don't forget the sharpener, just months prior to traveling to Washington, and all of a sudden, whoo, a K-bar knife sheath is found at the scene with prodigious amounts of his cells on the button snap left at the crime scene. Come on, folks. You can't ignore that. You can't ignore that. Anyway, In the midst of Sergeant Friday here, putting me on mute, which is fine. I expected he would. Dude's a clown. Anyway, whatever, you thug. Anyway, so in the midst of this, Yvonne comes in here and tries to tell everybody who I am, as if anybody cares. But nobody cares, Yvonne. Anyway, all I care about here is analyzing the facts. Facts. And so when I told them the button snap, they're like, "That's not on your button snap, you dummy. You're just a big dummy. It's not on the button snap." Yes, it was on the button snap. They swabbed both the button snap and the strap around it, around the button snap. So it wasn't just the strap. So they're trying to, I guess, it negates what I'm saying about upwards of 100,000 of cells, Bryan Kohberger cells on the button snap. They think that precludes that. That just wipes out your argument right there. Come on, as if. So I want to put this to rest once and for all. And that's the purpose of the title here. Okay? That is the purpose of the title. We're going to cover this. Anyway, this Brent Turvey. It's food for thought. I watched this interview with Donna Rotuno, whatever her name is. I watched this interview with Brent Turvey. And, I'm not going to say he's a bad guy, but come on, guys. He's as biased to defense as Cy Ray was biased to prosecution. Or is biased to prosecution, okay? It's the same difference. This guy, he even says it in here. He considers everybody innocent. Nobody could ever be guilty. He doesn't think anybody would lie. He doesn't presume anybody would lie. What world did this guy grow up in? Seriously. Because that has not been my life experience. People are freaking lying all the time, including the Kohberger Cult. They're massive liars. They lie all the time. They lie to themselves. They lie to everybody else. You all are huge liars. You're just liars. So Brent Turvey is being a liar if he doesn't acknowledge, and he should know this, but he's a crime scene analyst, so I understand why he doesn't know this exactly about IGG. It is considered an informant. It's considered a tip. Okay, so when you say informant, it's misleading. That's how they got the Bryan Kohberger. I have no doubt of that in my mind. They said it, and I believe it. That's how they got the Bryan Kohberger. Once they got that IGG tip, they started combing the evidence to see if they could corroborate this with evidence. And there was a massive task force on this, folks. This is why they could do it in the time that they did it, because they cobbled together a shit ton of people to work on this. They go through the evidence to see if anything matches Bryan Kohberger, including combing the video evidence once again. I mean, it fell in their lap, didn't it? Once they get to Bryan Kohberger through the IGG, they look at what kind of car they have. They had been analyzing the video evidence, and they're like, holy crap, he's got this car. This car falls right in this range. It's right here. And that's what you would expect to see if a prodigious amount of his DNA is on the button snap of a knife sheath left at the crime scene. You expect, well, how did he get there? Is his vehicle around there? He lives in Pullman, Washington, so he had a driver there. He couldn't have walked or ran there, so you expect to see his vehicle around there. And voila, you see a vehicle matching the description of his vehicle, meaning down to between a 2014 and a 2016. No fog lights. That's what you would expect to see, and that's what you saw. And that's what I saw. Join in the chat and ask questions if you got questions, and offer offer something valuable other than, LA's lying, he's being sent up free BK. Okay, something other than that. Like all your trolls that follow you all do. These people in here, they're all freaking trolls. They like to call other people trolls. They're the trolls. They're the trolls. They have no substance whatsoever. They're liars. They don't believe in science at all. They do not believe in science at all. They're slugs. The most of them are slugs. So let's put this to rest once and for all. The button snap was swabbed. The only thing that was not swabbed was the button, the shiny button part of that. The outer button. That's the only part that wasn't swabbed because they saved that for fingerprints because they thought they could get a good partial off of that because it's a wide surface. The rest of the button snap apparatus was swabbed along with the leather around it, the leather on the strap around it. So you're not clever and you're not intelligent by thinking, oh, we showed him it was on the strap, not the button snap. No, it was actually both, dummies. You're the dummies. You're the liars. You're the ones that will not assimilate facts, and you are the ones that won't accept that this was his DNA when his own defense team accepted it, and it was part of his defense team, so he accepted it too. But you won't accept it, even though he did. And he has. And this person here shows us. So here's the discussion. So this person says, hasn't it since been determined it was the button strap and not the snap? So you know automatically this is the Kohberger Cult when they start saying this nonsense. It is. It's the Kohberger Cult. And they think, got ya. It was not the button snap after all. Thank you for Repulsive Dot, a level-headed critical thinker here. So Repulsive Dot replies, it is from around the snap button on the strap. So I guess both. And he's right. Look it's circled here, right? So it's around the button part of the snap, okay? But look at here. All that indicates everything was swabbed within it, okay? Including the snap part of the button snap, all right? We know they explicitly said they did not do the button. Because look you could put your thumb on a button and you could get a fingerprint from that. So they didn't do the button part. But they would have no reason not to do the button snap. And since it falls within the region that they said they swabbed, that would mean they also swabbed the snap part of the button snap. Also, I would say on the inner part of this as well, where that button snap snaps into. Not the button part, but the other side of it. Is pictured in forensics document. I tend to use snap as I think 1.4 is from the back of the strap. Yes, exactly. So it's the back of this. 1.1 is from the front of the strap. The area indicated for swab area 1.1 is mostly the actual button or snap doofer, but is on the little strap around it too. Inside purple line shown. This person says, there was testimony to the effect of the actual top of the button was not swabbed because they felt that potential fingerprint evidence was more important than possible DNA evidence, which might be found there. I believe it was Kathy Mabit's response to being questioned about it by Ann Taylor. So Repulsive Dot said that you started this exchange by stating it was the strap, not the snap. Good point. Bring it back to them. So this person just took that to mean that the button part meant it was the whole button snap apparatus, and just jumped to, oh, they just swabbed the strap. Now, to me, this makes no difference about the sample that they extracted. This makes no difference to me. They extracted that sample. They're not framing Bryan Kohberger. So why anybody would want to push this and argue this, I don't know. This doesn't make any sense. But to set the record straight, I can assure you they swabbed the snap portion of this button snap apparatus. The only part they didn't swab was here because they're saving it for fingerprints. Why wouldn't they swab the other? Do you think they're just going to leave that alone? Why would they not swab it? They would swab it if they're not saving it for fingerprints. It only stands to reason, along with the parts of the strap surrounding it. Oh, good grief. What are you trying to say here? So, hasn't it since been determined it was the button strap, not the snap? And this person says it was clearly on the snap, which you may wish to acknowledge before now, oddly, moving on to stuff about button. The snap was swabbed. The interface of the button with leather was swabbed. The shiny button would not, I think, collect body fluid or indeed absorb fluid, which seems to be the question around the snap. And I think, yes, top of button was reserved to check prints. Yes. And then this person says, well, the story has evolved. Initially, it was said that the DNA was collected from the button snap. Mabbitt made a statement that the button, the part you touch for the snap to engage, was not swabbed in order to protect potential fingerprint evidence. The snap seemed to indicate the actual functioning male and female snap parts. Now, documents have been released that specifically say strap. My comments reference different points of time over the last 3 years and different suggestions about where the trace DNA purported to be that of BK was obtained. Purported to be that. We should all want clarification and reports that coincide. So Repulsive Dot says, okay. So Repulsive Dot says to the statement, the story has evolved. Not really. First court document, PCA, says snap. Later court documents over the next 2 years say snap or button snap. Last documents released, the forensics have a picture showing what was swabbed, the snap around the button and around the button on the strap. As the picture showing swabbing of the snap and swabbing was done November 18th, we can be sure nothing evolved or changed but was documented from the start. Here is the PCA. Would you like the forensics picture of the snap area too? P.S. Mabbitt is the coroner. She made no statements about DNA collection from the sheath. Exactly. Exactly. This is Rylene Nowlin. This is her area. And then this person says, oh, I stand corrected. It was Rylene Nowlin. Well, that's not good. That's not good if you get Mabbitt mixed up with Rylene Nowlin. And then Repulsive Dot says to that, she also said the snap was swabbed. Her testimony below. So perhaps you'll need to double stand corrected? Absolutely, they should double stand corrected. What do you mean by trace purported to be from BK? It was a very large amount, as was definitively matched to Bryan Kohberger. So it's not purported. It was. It was, and you all better accept that now. You do Bryan Kohberger no service by refuting this. He didn't even refute it. Tell me where you think the sheath was swabbed for purposes of DNA collection. This is Ann Taylor asking Rylene Nowlin under oath. I believe the analyst swabbed there's kind of a snap or a button that was the top of the snap, and that's the area that was swabbed. There were other areas on it sampled as well. So there you go. I mean, think about it, folks. Why would they not? Okay, why would they not? I understand the top of the button. That makes sense. There could be fingerprints on there. You're not going to get fingerprints on the other parts. You're not. So it would behoove you to swap them just in case. Why wouldn't you? And like I said, either way, what the hell does it matter? It doesn't change the equation. No matter if they got his prodigious amount of cells, upwards of 100,000 or more, and we'll see from a second that repulsive dot shows us that it could have been 200,000 cells. Could have been 200,000 cells. It was a prodigious amount, indicating direct transfer. BK, Bryan Kohberger's cells were on that knife sheath, on the button snap and surrounding the button snap in prodigious quantities, indicating that was his K-bar knife sheath because he had purchased one several months prior to going to Washington, and he can't produce it. They didn't even try to produce it to rebut the prosecution. Didn't even try. Why would that be? Where is the knife sheath? Where is the knife? And pursuant to that, where's the sharpener? Does anybody remember a knife sharpener in the list of evidence that was procured from his apartment or from the home? Did they find the sharpener? I don't recollect ever seeing that. Maybe I'm wrong. So this is a nothing burger. Speaking of Kohberger, this is a nothing burger. To make a claim that it's not the button snap, that doesn't even make any sense. You would be derelict in your duty as the lab analyst if you didn't swab everything around there. You'd be derelict in your duty. Why wouldn't you? Why would you not? And yes, of course, the leather on the strap around those areas as well, for the same reason, right? Now, where ultimately that all resided, I don't know. Whether it was on the leather or on the button snap apparatus itself, aside from the top of the button, I don't know. I don't even know if they would know exactly where it all would have come from in such prodigious quantities, but it came from that generalized area that they swabbed, for sure. It's all there. And once again, this is good because repulsive dot establishes once again the 100,000. I knew I got the 100,000 cells from somewhere, and this is where I got it. You just have to do the math, folks. So it says a reminder and recap of evidence, court filings, expert opinions, and data, which established the sheath snap had, or if you want the sheath, I'm thinking when they say the button snap apparatus, they're actually including the strap portion, okay? That's, to them, that's the apparatus. You've got the strap and you've got the button snap metal part to the strap. So to them, maybe that's all, they just consider that one contiguous unit right there. And they swabbed the whole damn thing except for the top of the button. Okay, this is semantics though, folks. It doesn't detract from it being BK's cells on this in prodigious quantity, indicating he touched it directly, numerous times, no doubt. Had a large amount of Kohberger's DNA, as we still see many comments that think it was a few cells or trace. It is established that the quantity of Kohberger's DNA, single source, on the sheath was a large amount from, number one, published amount in the ISP forensic reports, which gives the extraction solution concentration of 0.168 nanograms per UL, 1 UL. This equates to 28,000 cells. Now, how do you get to that number? 0.168 nanograms is 168,000 picograms. 168,000 picograms divided by 6 gets you 28,000 cells. One cell has approximately 6 picograms of DNA. Okay, so that's how you get to 28,000 cells. It's just simple math, folks. That's 28,000 cells. However, you have to take into account, and this is what repulsive dot says. We covered this before. This equates to 28,000 cells, already a much larger amount than the Kohberger Cult wants to admit, but that's it. This equates to 28,000 cells equivalent in the extraction solution. In the extraction solution, folks, all right? But as not all DNA is transferred to the swab, meaning to the swab from the sheath itself that you're swabbing, and not all DNA is transferred from the swab to the solution, so you're losing DNA each time, and a significant amount, I might add. This equates, so for example, from the sheath to the swab, you only get approximately less than 50% of it. And sometimes it's a range, and less than that. That's the high end of the range. Let's think it's 47%. So that's the high end of the range. It can be lower. Okay, and that's what repulsive thought's getting to here. And then from the swab to getting it into solution, you lose some too. And the least is 15%, but it can be more than that as well. It's a range as well. But the best you can get is 85% of it gets transferred. That's the best. It can be less. So if you just take the best of both of those, 47% and 85%, you're already equating to over 100,000 cells equivalent on the DNA sheath. That's using the, like I said, the best case values. So if you use the low or the worst case values, it could actually have been 200,000 cells equivalent on the strap and button snap apparatus that was swabbed. 200,000 cells. That's massive, folks. That sure beats 20, okay? That sure beats 20. So stop. Just stop, folks. You're twisting yourself in pretzels. Don't claim you want the truth when you don't really want the truth. Okay? If you want the truth, come on. Come on, I know you're watching. Just come out and refute this. Just refute it. What's important amidst all this is it doesn't matter whether it was on the leather or the metal part that wasn't the top of that button. That doesn't matter. It still doesn't preclude the fact that this is a prodigious amount of Bryan Kohberger's skin cells. It doesn't preclude that fact. So I don't know why you think that's some kind of rebuttal. It's not a rebuttal. And not only that, it's not true. Any lab analyst, any lab worth its salt is going to swab that entire button snap apparatus to include the leather around it on the strap. They're going to do that. And they did. And they said they did. It just makes no sense to me that you want to argue these kind of points. There are better points to argue if you're going to argue points. This is not going to help your man. The defense conceded that was his DNA. That means he conceded. It was his defense. Don't tell me he wasn't part of it, despite what Brent Turvey says. Now remember, Brent Turvey is involved in the Innocence Project. And I will say, he did mention, and so I'm going to correct myself from yesterday. Sometimes, although I think it's rare, but sometimes it does happen where innocent people will plead bargain to accept a life sentence in return for not having to deal with the death penalty. And it's because of, bad lawyers. Bad lawyers. I would say a lot of times it probably has to do with defense lawyers who are public defenders, unfortunately. So, correction. Yes, some innocent people do this. But those cases aren't like this case. In my opinion, they're not. It's still apples and oranges. Because those cases they're not receiving international publicity like this one. I mean, in my opinion, Ann Taylor and Bryan Kohberger's defense team always had that on their side. International publicity. The scrutiny was on law enforcement here. Law enforcement doesn't want this kind of scrutiny. Believe me, they didn't want this kind of attention. They got it, but they didn't want it. So that kind of attention was good for the defense, because the prosecution had to be on the up and up. The prosecution had to have its house in order. The prosecution had to button things up. Because if they don't, they're going to get exposed. And that's going to be known internationally. Not a good look. So yeah, Brent Turvey is as biased as Cy Ray. He thinks that Bryan Kohberger is innocent. It's his job to find ways to show someone's innocent. And I can assure you, in that process, he gets it wrong sometimes. He thinks someone's innocent when they're not. I don't know how many times. Let's say 30% of the time. Or 40% of the time. He's wrong. He thinks someone's innocent, they wouldn't lie, and they actually are guilty, and they would lie. Who knows where that percentage lies? But I can tell you he's not perfect in this regard. I guarantee you he's not. Any more than Cy Ray is perfect in his biased proclivity to the prosecution. So I accept this. I'm not a dummy. I'm not unintelligent. I'm a critical thinker. I accept this. It's up to Bryan Kohberger to try to explain it. It's not, I'm sorry, when he tries to get this all thrown out, that's not helping in his cause to convince me of his innocence. If his idea is just get it thrown out, just get all the evidence against me thrown out. Can you imagine what our justice system would look like if everybody took this approach and it was successful? We would have no prisons. And the murder rate would be, 50% of our population. It would be a great way to cull the population. Let's put it that way. There'd be murders left and right. It would be, a free pass and license for murderers everywhere to have their way. If they could just, if it went to court and they just say, I don't want to waive, I just want to that's prejudice evidence against me. Get rid of it. Are you kidding? Rebut it, Bryan Kohberger. Anyway, I thought I'd clear that up. I don't want to be too long on this. So, as I see, some people have dropped in and watched this. There's 2 views. So somebody was watching it again, but not talking. So who knows who that is? Who the hell knows? Anyway, till next time, take care, everybody. See ya.